Trump's Epstein love letter, Mike Johnson's shrinkage, Scott Bessent's temper. He's the secretary-treasurer, and he's an angry young man. Gaza, Ukraine, and ICE, and more. This is the mop-up. The Jeffrey Epstein estate responds to a subpoena from Jim Comer's Republican-controlled House Oversight Committee and turns over key documents, including the infamous birthday book compiled by Ghislaine Maxwell for Epstein's 50th birthday, which included messages from Bill Clinton, attorney Alan Dershowitz, and of course, Donald Trump. Democrats immediately unsealed Trump's birthday message to Epstein on Monday, which that message included a drawing of a woman's breast as well as pubic hair. The story of Trump's letter was first reported back in July by the Wall Street Journal, prompting Trump to sue the newspaper and its owner, Rupert Murdoch, for $10 billion, calling reporting on that letter false and defamatory. Alan Dershowitz yesterday now saying Trump's lawsuit is going nowhere. Trump's letter to Jeffrey Epstein contains a cryptic message about a wonderful secret. The letter includes an imaginary conversation between Trump and Epstein where they discuss enigmas and a wonderful secret. Quote, "We have certain things in common," says Donald. "Yes, we do, come to think of it," Jeffrey responds. "Enigmas never age. Have you noticed that?" Donald asks. "As a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you," Jeffrey says. Quote, "A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret," the note concludes. Trump's signature, a squiggly Donald, is placed below the woman's waist that he drew, and his signature mimics pubic hair. Trump adamantly denies it's his signature, but the Wall Street Journal Monday doubling down with forensic evidence, claiming, yes, it's Trump's signature and his style of writing. In a 6-3 emergency ruling on Monday, the Supreme Court said ICE can continue what are called roving raids, in which suspected undocumented immigrants can be detained based on their appearance, language, accent, skin color, or type of work they're doing. On July 11th, California U.S. District Judge Mamie Frimpong ordered a temporary stop of these roving raids, calling them a likely violation of the Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. Well, the Supreme Court overturned her emergency ruling, so now the roving raids can continue until the Supreme Court makes a final decision on these roving raids' constitutionality. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, in her dissenting opinion, wrote Donald Trump as, quote, "all but declared that all Latinos, U.S. citizens or not, who work low-wage jobs are fair game to be seized at any time," unquote. Justice Sotomayor went on to write that people should not have to live in a nation where the government can seize individuals based on looking Latino or speaking Spanish or appearing to work a low-wage job. She concluded that she dissented, quote, "rather than stand idly by while our constitutional freedoms are lost." Again, this is a temporary ruling. It's not permanent. Well, get ready for it, Chicago. Donald Trump says he's still deciding on whether to invade Chicago or go down to New Orleans, where the governor of Louisiana has asked him to send in the troops. The Guardian reporting Chicago is far from the murder capital, despite what Trump wants you to believe. Among cities with more than 50,000 people, Chicago ranks 37th, near the bottom, for highest violent crime rate. less violent than cities in red states like Jackson, Mississippi, Birmingham, Alabama, St. Louis, Missouri, or Memphis, Tennessee. But that doesn't matter to Trump. He doesn't care what the truth is when you're trying to flex your authoritarian muscle. Here is Trump talking about the possibility of going into Chicago.
Chicago is a very dangerous place. So we have a governor that doesn't care about crime. I guess we could solve Chicago very quickly, but we're going to make a decision as to where we go over the next day or two.
Yeah, you're going to solve it very quickly. I believe him, right? The same way he solved inflation, Gaza, and Ukraine. Well, I'm going to get back to the Epstein story because there's more, but I want to play you a clip of a female reporter. It's very important that you know that this is a female reporter. It's a little muddied. We cleaned up the audio. This is a female reporter asking Trump if he actually declared war on Chicago, because over the weekend, Trump took to social media saying Chicago is about to discover why he changed the name of the Defense Department to the War Department. Some people took that as a declaration of war against Chicago. It is menacing. So a female reporter asked Trump about this, and you can make out he calls her darling and then talks to her in a way that he most undoubtedly talks to every single woman in his life when the camera isn't rolling. If this is how Trump talks to a female reporter in public, imagine how he talks to Melania or every other woman in his life in private. So it's a little muddied, but listen.
It's actually more to fake news than you say that, darling. That's fake news. What? I don't go to war. Listen, be quiet. Listen. You don't listen. You never listen. That's why you're second rate. We're not going to war. We're going to clean up our cities.
Okay, I thought I cleaned up the audio. But anyway. Wow. Meanwhile, Illinois Democrat Senator Tammy Duckworth says Trump is essentially declaring war on a major city. Mexican Independence Day events for Chicago have been canceled for fear ICE agents will use them as an opportunity to kidnap people. The El Grito Festival, it's a 2-day celebration in Grant Park. Last year it had 24,000 people showing up. It has now been called off. ICE, meanwhile, has launched an invasion into Boston, another sanctuary city that the Trump administration is targeting. ICE is calling this Boston roundup, quote, Operation Patriot 2.0. There's nothing patriotic about it. Mayor Michelle Wu telling ICE, quote, no Boston police or local resources will be co-opted into federal immigration enforcement and their mass deportation agenda, unquote. A recent Supreme Court ruling said cities cannot be commandeered by federal law enforcement agencies to assist in the enforcement of federal laws. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey calling the ICE invasion political theater and a power grab. Border czar Tom Homan warning that the people who are funding ICE protests will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. So Tom Homan, idiot, is unfamiliar, obviously, with the Fourth Amendment and obviously the First Amendment. Homan incorrectly claimed that it is against the law for someone to pay for buses, providing free travel to citizens who want to come to a city and protest. If that were illegal, you'd have to arrest Dick Armey for the Tea Party. That's entirely what the Tea Party was. Dick Armey bussing in an army of dicks masquerading as the Tea Party. And you'd have to arrest Charlie Kirk, founder of Turning Point USA, who openly admitted to sending at least 7 buses to Washington, D.C. on January 6, filled with protesters. ICE is now threatening to deport Kilmar Abrego Garcia to Eswatini in southern Africa. It's a country in southern Africa. Garcia is currently being held in an ICE detention facility after he was returned from El Salvador to face charges of human smuggling in Tennessee, trumped-up charges, Trump being the operative word. The judge in that human smuggling trial released him, saying the charges against him are flimsy and that he is neither risk to the community nor a flight risk. Well, turns out he is a flight risk because ICE is trying to fly him to Africa before his bogus human trafficking case ever goes to trial. It's going to be thrown out. The judge in that human smuggling trial, in a preliminary hearing, told federal prosecutors that it is physically impossible for Abrego Garcia to be a human smuggler. In fact, he's not even being charged with human smuggling. They call him a human smuggler. He's charged with transporting undocumented immigrants for money in this country. That's not sneaking people over the border. The Trump administration says it wants to make the U.S. citizenship test harder to pass. They may even include an essay portion. Joseph Edlow, Trump's new director of the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, saying he envisions an essay question asking, what does it mean to be an American? The opposite of you. That's what it means to be an American. They want to make the U.S. citizenship test harder. Well, immigration falls under the Department of Homeland Security, and the current head of Homeland Security is Kristi Noem. And this is how I envision her without makeup after a night with serial abuser Corey Lewandowski, who is her de facto chief of staff over at Homeland Security and rumored to be her lover. That seems to be the big rumor. This is how I believe she looks the morning after. Anyway, she's an idiot who couldn't pass a simple U.S. citizenship test, even though she's administering them. Why couldn't she pass a simple U.S. citizenship test? Because besides being a liar, she's an idiot. How does the head of Homeland Security, who is supposed to keep us safe, how does her Louis Vuitton bag with $4,000 in it get stolen right from underneath her seat during an Easter dinner? Does that make you feel safe having this idiot as director of Homeland Security? She is stupid. Here, Kristi Noem is last month testifying before the Homeland Security Committee. Democratic Senator from New Hampshire, Maggie Hassan, asked Kristi Noem a simple question that the head of Homeland Security should know the answer to, and it's on the immigration test.
So, Secretary Noem, what is habeas corpus?
Well, habeas corpus is a constitutional right that the president has to be able to remove people from this country and suspend their right
let me stop you, ma'am. Habeas corpus, excuse me, that's incorrect.
President Lincoln used it.
President Lincoln used it. Did you hear that? No. President Lincoln suspended it. You idiot. You idiot. The Federal Trade Commission was established in 1914 to fight monopolies, unfair business practices, and protect consumers from deceptive advertising and products. The FTC is led by 5 commissioners who are appointed by the president, but they have to be confirmed by the Senate. They serve 7-year terms, so it's staggered from administration to administration. Earlier this year, Trump fired 2 Democrats serving on the FTC commission. Rebecca Slaughter, one of those Democratic commissioners, sued the Trump administration, claiming she was fired without cause. Last week, a lower court ruled in her favor, and Slaughter was prepared to return to her job. But on Monday, Chief Justice John Roberts overturned the lower court, issuing a stay, meaning Slaughter's firing will remain in effect until the Supreme Court decides on the case. The arguments on her case will continue. The Trump Solicitor General has been ordered by Roberts to present a written argument on September 15th. A blockbuster ruling on Monday from Israel's Supreme Court. At least 61 Palestinian prisoners have died in Israeli custody since war broke out on October 7th, 2023. The Association for Civil Rights in Israel saying the Netanyahu government has, quote, turned Israeli prisons into torture camps. On Monday, the Israeli Supreme Court ruling that Israel's national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, has been starving Palestinian prisoners. The Supreme Court ordered him to increase the rations, the food rations for Palestinian inmates, and to improve the quality of their food. This is a surprise ruling since the Israeli Supreme Court rarely issues an order against the military when Israel is at war. Israel's national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, promised to ignore that court order. In the past, he's bragged about the unhealthy living conditions inside Israeli prisons when it comes to Palestinians. He was one of the first inside the Netanyahu government to call for the removal of Palestinians from Gaza. That would be ethnic cleansing, which, according to the UN, is genocide. Israel's national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, blamed a Palestinian gunman killing 6 Israelis Monday. He blamed that shooting on the Supreme Court's ruling that day, which ordered him to increase food rations for Palestinian prisoners. After the shooting, Gvir said the Supreme Court ruling sent the wrong message to terrorists, and he promised to ignore the court order. 2 Palestinian gunmen opened fire at a Jerusalem bus stop on Monday, killing 6, injuring others. The gunmen were then killed after police fired back. Among those killed were a cardiologist and a rabbi. Israel confirmed that an armed drone launched from Yemen by Houthi fighters got past Israel's air defenses and hit Ramon International Airport in southern Israel. Ramon is the second largest airport in Israel. A 63-year-old Israeli man had to be treated for shrapnel wounds. In Gaza, Israel now claiming it controls 40% of Gaza City. Gaza City, the largest city in Gaza. They control 40% as ground operations continue alongside heavy air assaults. 58 Palestinians in Gaza reported dead on Monday, 32 in Gaza City. Gaza City, which Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has ordered all Palestinians to leave. He wants them to head down to southern Gaza, where eventually they will all be rounded up and placed in humanitarian city before, that's the plan, they are sent to a third country, possibly somewhere in Africa. Gaza's health ministry reporting that about 400 Palestinians died from starvation over the past 24 hours. Negotiations between Hamas and Israel continue, with Qatar, Egypt, and Trump's peace envoy, real estate lawyer Steve Witkoff, all serving as mediators. You're doing a great job, Steve Witkoff. Brilliant man, Steve Witkoff. Hamas is demanding an end to all the fighting, Israel's total withdrawal from Gaza. They're also demanding that Israel completely pull out of Gaza, and they want to create a Palestinian governing body inside Gaza. Hamas says all that before it will release the remaining hostages. Thousands of Israelis protested on Sunday, calling for Netanyahu to end his reoccupation of Gaza. Those calls went unheeded as Israeli bombs destroyed yet another Gaza City residential high-rise tower. So far, 3 high-rise towers in Gaza have been taken out in the past 3 days. The Al Roya Tower and the Susi Tower were destroyed after the Israeli military gave people living inside 20 minutes to gather your belongings and get out. Israel is intent on taking over all of Gaza City. where an estimated 1 million Palestinians still reside, the military ordering everyone in Gaza City to leave. Humanitarian airdrops have been halted over Gaza City, and now distribution points for food have been moved outside Gaza City to encourage residents to leave, to go south. Trump on Sunday taking to social media telling Hamas, quote, "This is my last warning to release the hostages." Really? Because I believe Trump has made several last warnings that Hamas should release the hostages. Trump issued that statement while attending the U.S. Open, or the U.S. Not So Open, because there's new reporting that ESPN and other broadcasters were ordered by the United States Tennis Association not to broadcast the audience booing Trump when he arrived at Arthur Ashe Stadium. And Trump was booed. Some people cheered him, but he was booed. However, Bruce Springsteen was also in attendance. Maybe they weren't booing. Maybe they were shouting Bruce. I mean, if you've ever been to a Bruce Springsteen concert, you know what it sounds like when they shout Bruce. I think that's it. They weren't booing you, Mr. Trump. People just noticed that when you arrived, Bruce Springsteen was also in the crowd. A photographer at the U.S. Open caught this photo. It's being circulated throughout the internet. It's a picture of Trump sitting there with a mysterious pill in his mouth, and people are wondering what kind of medication Trump is taking. Maybe it's not medication. Maybe it's something innocent and harmless. Maybe he's just popping a Tic Tac before grabbing pussy without permission. Back to the Middle East, the Lebanese government approved a plan last week ordering its military to disarm Hezbollah, the paramilitary organization in southern Lebanon financed by Iran to wage war on Israel. This year, Israel wiped out much of Hezbollah's leadership. This left an opening and has prompted many in the Lebanese government to call for Lebanon's army to have a monopoly on state-sanctioned violence. Right now, because of Hezbollah, there are two armies inside Lebanon. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky saying it's a pity he wasn't allowed to attend last month's Alaska summit between Putin and Trump. Zelensky said that since the meeting in Alaska, Trump has given Putin everything Putin wanted. This as Trump publicly calls on Putin to come to the negotiating table and work towards a ceasefire. Putin taunts our American president every day. This weekend, he launched the largest airstrike on Ukraine since the invasion. For the first time, Kiev's central government headquarters was hit when Russia launched more than 800 drone and 13 surface-to-air missiles. 4 people, including a 2-month-old baby and her mother, were killed from the attacks. An airstrike 2 weeks ago killed 25 Ukrainian civilians. At the time, that was considered the worst Russian air assault since they invaded Ukraine. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said yesterday Putin isn't serious about wanting peace. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the Kremlin is mocking diplomacy while trampling international law. But Donald Trump insisting nobody has been tougher, the hell is that? Nobody has been tougher on Putin than he has. Trump added, the Russia-Ukraine situation, we're going to get it done. Yeah, we have a lot of confidence in you. Immediately after the Alaska summit, Trump announced that Putin agreed to a meeting with Zelensky. And Putin said, no, I didn't. The deadline for that meeting has passed. On July 14th, before the summit, Trump issued a public ultimatum warning Putin he had exactly 50 days to end the fighting in Ukraine, or much harsher economic sanctions would go into effect. Well, Well, that 50-day deadline passed with no economic sanctions, and then Trump rewarded Putin with the Alaska summit meeting. After the summit meeting, as fighting continued, as airstrikes against Ukraine intensified, Trump gave Putin another deadline. He gave him a 2-week deadline, or else economic sanctions. That 2-week deadline also expired. But tell me again how Trump is tough and says what he means and means what he says. After Russia's massive assault this weekend, Trump threatened that he's this close to what? Threatening more sanctions? He says he's this close to a second phase of economic sanctions on Moscow. He says they'll be worse than Biden's. Well, Mr. President, I just threw up a little in my mouth calling him Mr. President. Mr. Moron, there's a bipartisan bill sitting in the Senate right now that would slap a 500% tariff on any country that purchases Russian oil, and that would crush Putin's economy. That's all you have to do is move that bill. Lindsey Graham co-sponsored it. So far, no movement from the White House on that bill. Trump last month is saying he's getting tough on Russia because he imposed 50% tariffs on India, claiming he did that because India has continued to purchase Russian oil despite Trump telling them to buy American oil instead. Well, a 50% tariff is not the same thing as a 500% tariff. Okay, but he's taking credit for slapping a 50% tariff on India because they're still buying oil from Moscow, but he's a liar. House Democrat Adam Smith, who represents Washington State's 9th congressional district, saying Trump's 50% tariff on India had nothing to do with Modi buying Russian oil. See, Trump is mad at Indian Prime Minister Modi for not crediting Trump with negotiating a tentative ceasefire between India and Pakistan. There was some real fighting in Kashmir that broke out. And then on May 10th, the two countries reached a tentative ceasefire that Trump immediately took credit for, but India said Trump had nothing to do with it. And Modi is an authoritarian, just like Trump. He's part of the fascist brotherhood. But even Modi wouldn't give Trump credit for the ceasefire. Here's Congressman Adam Smith.
On them. We booked 50% tariffs on them because Trump was
back
offended that Modi wouldn't give him credit.
Let me go back. We screwed up there. Here we go. Here's Adam Smith.
And why did we book 50% tariffs on them? We booked 50% tariffs on them because Trump was offended that Modi wouldn't give him credit for a war, for ending a war that Trump didn't deserve credit for. Yeah. This notion that he did it because India buys Russian oil, Trump won't even enforce our sanctions on Russia. He's not putting a tariff on India because of that concern. He blew off an ally because the ally refused to lie for him personally. I mean, it's just placing us in so much greater danger. And then the idea that, oh, but we've solved the problem by changing the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War. That's going to send a power. It's ridiculous. And the policies he's implementing are incredibly harmful to us. Focus on the policies, not the lies.
Congressman Adam Smith, whose autobiography, I believe, is The Wealth of Nations. Well, some fisticuffs, almost, again, among cabinet officials. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, he loves to use his fist. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent telling reporters that it's time for severe economic sanctions in order to, quote, collapse the Russian economy. Those are fighting words coming from Scott Bessent. Collapse the Russian economy. See, Scott Bessent, always itching for a fight. And, you know, but ask this guy, Nepo baby Bill Pulte, who serves as Trump's new Federal Housing Finance Agency director. Bessent was going to rip his head off. He said I'm going to rip your head off. Well, Bill Pulte, Nepo baby, he inherited millions from his grandfather, and his grandfather made a fortune in home building. So he has become Trump's pit bull. He's pouring through mortgage agreements to bring criminal referrals against Trump's political enemies. That's what he's doing as Federal Housing Finance Agency director. He's reading everybody's mortgages. I'll get back to that in a second. Trump has ordered Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, and Bill Pulte, Nepo baby, to come up with a plan to privatize Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So nobody knows what Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are. They are corporations, but they're run by the government. They're kind of owned partly by the government, and they were set up to provide liquidity or cash to the mortgage market by purchasing mortgages from banks and lenders and then bundling them together into securities that are then traded on Wall Street. Remember the financial collapse in 2008? Trump wants these two government corporations to be privatized. What could possibly go wrong privatizing Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac? What could go wrong? I don't know. Let's ask Bear Stearns. Well, Politico reporting, where am I? Politico, I've got nothing. Okay, let's try this again. Politico reporting that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent came after Nepo baby Bill Pulte at an exclusive Georgetown club where Republicans in the White House gather. Scott Bessent grew violent, threatening to beat the crap out of Bill Pulte. It was last Wednesday. Those who witnessed it described Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as unhinged and bonkers. Yeah, as opposed to everybody else in that room. So, this is what the reporting is. Bessent walked up to Bill Pulte and said, quote, "Why the F," but he said the word, "are you talking to the president about me? F you." Then Bessent said, "I'm going to punch you in your effing face. I'm cleaning it up." Then Scott Bessent walked up to the co-owner of this exclusive Georgetown club and said to Omid Malik, who is the co-owner, he said, "It's either me or him. You tell me who's getting the F out of here." Got to, pick one or the other. And then Bessent turned to Bill Pulte and said, "Or we could go outside." Pulte said, "To do what?" Bessent said, "So I can beat your effing ass," unquote. Well, very scary. Very scary. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Very scary man. Very violent. This is not the first time we've heard of Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent getting into, or almost getting into, a fight. Elon Musk reportedly charged Scott Bessent with his shoulder after Bessent cornered Musk after an Oval Office meeting earlier this year. Bessent called Musk an effing fraud. The two men began wrestling and had to be separated. Well, passions run high when you're filled with self-loathing the way Scott Bessent is. Imagine being Scott Bessent working in the homophobic Trump White House and then going home to your husband and family. It wears on you. Bill Pulte, who serves as Trump's new Federal Housing Finance Agency director, he's looking at everyone's mortgage, and he has declared, quote, fraud will not be tolerated in President Trump's housing market because Donald Trump is all about law and order. And Bill Pulte is going to keep us safe from Trump's enemies intent on lying when they fill out an application for a mortgage. Pulte wants Trump's enemy, Senator Adam Schiff of California, prosecuted for mortgage fraud because Adam Schiff took out a primary residence mortgage on his Maryland home while at the same time claimed his primary residence is in Burbank, California, when he took out a mortgage for that home. See, you can only have one primary residence, and to have two primary residences when you're filling out a mortgage, it's an act of treason, according to Donald Trump, who last year was found civilly liable for defrauding lenders and banks to the tune of at least $500 million. So it's treason to have two primary residences. New York State Attorney General Letitia James, another of Trump's enemies, she's the one who got that civil judgment last year. She is being accused by Pulte of listing her home in Virginia as her primary residence, despite Letitia James having to list New York as her primary residence because you can't serve as Attorney General in New York unless you list on your mortgage your home in New York being your primary residence. Well, obviously, this is treason. This is the worst crime ever committed. Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook has been accused by Pulte of having two homes with two mortgage listings. Both of the mortgages she claims are her primary residence. Trump had no choice but to fire the black woman from the Fed. Nobody's quite sure if he has the power to fire her. Trump wants her gone because he says she's, quote, blatant and intentionally committing mortgage fraud, says the convicted felon who is civilly liable for defrauding banks and lenders somewhere in the neighborhood of $500 million. ProPublica reporting that three members of Trump's cabinet have committed the same exact mortgage violations that Adam Schiff, Letitia James, and Lisa Cook are now being accused of. ProPublica reporting Labor Secretary Lori Chavez DeRemer has two primary residence mortgages for her homes in Happy Valley, Oregon, and Fountain Hills, Arizona. But it's different. It's different. ProPublica reporting Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy and his wife, they have two primary residence mortgages for a home in Far Hills, New Jersey, and another in Washington, D.C. It's different. It's different. ProPublica reporting Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Lee Zeldin and his wife have two primary residence mortgages for homes in Shirley, New York, and Washington, D.C., but it's different. It's different. Reuters reporting that Bill Pulte, his father, illegally claimed tax exemptions on two properties in Michigan, which his father claimed were both primary residences. After Reuters broke the story, Michigan revoked Bill Pulte's real estate tax breaks on those two homes. Reuters also reporting Bill Pulte's wife illegally donated $500,000 last year to a Trump super PAC. It was an illegal donation. She routed it through. She tried to hide it, but it's different because they're white and they inherited millions from their grandfather. This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. Please share this episode with your friends. Please share it. Please share it on social media. Get the word out. And like this episode, so I remain in your feed. Leave a comment. I read all your comments. If I made any mistakes, let me know, because I issue corrections on this program. Believe it or not, I issue corrections. A federal appeals court in New York State upheld last year's $83.3 million judgment against Donald Trump in the E. Jean Carroll civil lawsuit that will go before the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, it's starting to look like the Department of Justice and the Republican leadership in the House trying to put a lid on Trump's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, it looks like things are getting worse for the White House on the Jeffrey Epstein front. Do I think the Epstein story will have any effect on next year's midterms or make it harder for Trump to run again? Well, I have some interesting polling that, well, I'm not going to be able to get to it today, but on the next show, I have some interesting polling. The short answer is no. It's not going to have any effect on the midterms or Trump's reelection campaign. If Trump, however, if he were Nixon or Clinton, members of his own party right now would be urging him to step aside right now to make way for the next generation because of the Epstein files. But it's different with Trump, because in authoritarian power plays, if you study authoritarian regimes, and that's what we're living under right now. We have an authoritarian leader who controls the Supreme Court and both chambers of Congress. So this is an authoritarian state right now, and it can get worse. Thanks to federalism, it hasn't gotten as bad as it could be, but it can get worse. So will Epstein affect Trump? In authoritarian power plays, which we're witnessing now, traditionally scandals like this, hypocrisy, they actually play to a fascist's strength. It actually helps the fascist because a true strongman just doesn't control the news cycles. He also controls what people actually think. So Trump, in a perverse way, and everything about Trump is perverse, he loves controlling the narrative on the Epstein files. And he marvels at what people like Mike Johnson are willing to say in his defense and how his supplicants and voters will believe anything he says about him and Jeffrey Epstein. And we're seeing this in the House right now. 215 House members have already signed that discharge petition introduced by House Republican Thomas Massie and House Democrat Ro Khanna. This is a bipartisan discharge petition. And if they get enough signatures, right now they're 3 shy, they need 218, then this discharge petition would force a vote over the objections of Speaker Mike Johnson. It would force a vote on calling for the Justice Department to turn over the entire contents of the Epstein files to the House of Representatives. Jamie Dupree, writing over at Substack, says that so far, only 4 Republicans have signed the petition. We are expecting 12. Only 4. Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nancy Mace, and Lauren Boebert. That's it. Again, it was generally assumed that Massie could easily get 12 Republican signatures, 6 more than necessary. He just needs 6. So far, we're not seeing those other, 8 signing the petition, because the White House calls this discharge petition a quote-unquote hostile act. And we all know how unseemly Trump finds hostility, unless it's his hostility. Speaker Johnson says the discharge petition is unnecessary because we've got Republican Jim Comer, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, on top of it. He's looking into the Epstein matter. Comer has already gone on record saying Trump has been completely exonerated, even though the hearings have just begun. He said he's completely exonerated based on Ghislaine Maxwell's conversation with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche last month. They talked for 2 days, and Ghislaine Maxwell said, Donald Trump, who can give me a pardon, was a perfect gentleman with Jeffrey. I never saw Donald Trump do anything untoward. He's just totally the man who can pardon me. Innocent man. Jim Comer, head of the House Oversight Committee investigating Jeffrey Epstein, says her testimony exonerates Trump. There's no need to look into Trump. Comer's Oversight Committee subpoenaed the Epstein files from the Justice Department. So far, the Justice Department has handed over probably what amounts to 1% of the totality of those files. But Comer says Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, has been wonderfully cooperative. You might remember Pam Bondi announced 2 months ago that the Epstein investigation is officially closed and that there never was an Epstein client list. Earlier in the year, Donald Trump filed a $10 billion defamation lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal and its owner, Rupert Murdoch, after the Wall Street Journal broke the story of a book Ghislaine Maxwell put together for Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. And it included messages from prominent celebrities, politicians, and failed businessmen like Donald Trump. Trump insisted the Wall Street Journal story was fake and that he never wrote this letter praising Epstein. And, well, as I said at the top of the show, on Monday, the Epstein estate turned over documents, this is one of them, subpoenaed by the House Oversight Committee, and among the files was a copy of Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday book. Democrats in the committee immediately made this letter public. It's hard to read. The Wall Street Journal on Monday then published a story relying on a forensics analysis that concluded this letter was in fact written by Donald Trump. Again, considering that last year 2 juries found Donald Trump civilly liable for sexually assaulting and then defaming E. Jean Carroll, and Trump was still elected the same year that he became a convicted felon, the Epstein story feels, at least to me, like a minor brush fire that Republicans will be able to control, and they view it as just the cost of doing business with this monster. They don't care about Epstein. They don't care about the girls, the women, E. Jean Carroll, the banks he defrauded. They don't care about the accounting laws he broke that made him a convicted felon. This is about lowering taxes on the rich, keeping rich people out of jail, and getting rid of any regulations that will cut into the profits of corporations or the 1,000 billionaires we now have in the United States. Epstein is the clown show donors paid for. So you and I wouldn't be talking about climate change, Gaza, or income inequality. I like to think on this show we talk about other things besides Jeffrey Epstein. But it is important because anything that can damage Donald Trump and the Republicans, you go with. I will go with whatever it takes to defeat a Nazi. On Monday, Speaker Mike Johnson was forced to walk back last week's statement calling Trump an FBI informant. He actually said this. Our speaker, Mike Johnson, claimed last week that Trump was an FBI informant who helped crack the Epstein case by banning Epstein from Mar-a-Lago. On Monday, Johnson walked that back. He said, I used the wrong terminology. But Johnson saying Democrats have impure motives. That's what he said, impure motives for trying to link Trump to the Epstein case, and said he has spoken to Trump multiple times about the Epstein case. And Mike Johnson says Trump wants full transparency on the Epstein files, and the Democrats have impure motives. And this is the same man who gave his daughter a purity ring so she would maintain her virginity. He went to one of those purity balls with his daughter where they both exchange vows that she will remain a virgin until she's married, and that she will marry a virgin as well, and then discover the reason her husband is a virgin is he's a closet case, and then she's stuck in a sexless marriage. That's how it usually plays out. Johnson was asked if Trump, if you say Trump wants full transparency, then why are you blocking this discharge petition? Johnson immediately changed the subject, saying Trump is an innocent man because he banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago. Well, according to reports, Trump banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago in late 2007, roughly 8 months before Epstein was forced to plead guilty to soliciting an underage girl for prostitution. The timing of the ban, the investigation had started, and suddenly Epstein's banned from Mar-a-Lago. Now, Trump first said Epstein was banned from Mar-a-Lago because he was told that Epstein acted inappropriately with the daughter of a Mar-a-Lago member. But Trump this year, and for some reason he's changed the story, Trump is now claiming that he banned Epstein after he learned that Epstein had poached Virginia Giuffre to come work for him, Epstein. This was when Giuffre, 16, was working as a spa attendant inside Mar-a-Lago. And Trump said he banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago because he was poaching 16-year-old spa attendants from Mar-a-Lago. Like, you're stealing my employees. And Trump thinks that's the better story. You know, his dementia runs in the family. So Virginia Giuffre committed suicide this year. She won a multi-million-dollar settlement with the royal family after suing Prince Andrew, claiming Epstein forced her to have sex with Andrew on 3 separate occasions. So for some reason, Trump, whose father and grandfather were demented and suffered from dementia, for some reason, Donald Trump has decided that version of his fallout with Epstein, that saying that he stole Virginia Giuffre from me, the 16-year-old spa attendant at Mar-a-Lago. That's why I had a falling out with him, not because he was a creep with my friend's daughter. I'd go back to the first story, Donald. Well, Trump says he wants full transparency and wants to get to the bottom of the Epstein story. Throughout the campaign last year, he promised to release all of the Epstein files, but now he calls the Epstein files a Democratic hoax. Meanwhile, The Guardian reporting several attorneys representing 50 Epstein victims. They all say Pam Bondi's Justice Department has no interest in meeting with any of these victims. Gloria Allred, who represents 27 of Epstein's victims, telling The Guardian, quote, "There has still been no outreach from the Department of Justice or members of Congress to me seeking to interview my clients," unquote. Lisa Bloom, Gloria Allred's daughter, represents 13 other Epstein victims. She told The Guardian, quote, "No, haven't heard anything. As usual, the survivors are being ignored in the political battle." Lisa Bloom. Remember Lisa Bloom? What a great woman, Lisa Bloom. She is a tireless ally. She is. Never backing down. A champion for all women. Here she is with her client, Harvey Weinstein. Remember this story? I remember things, Lisa Bloom. Back in 2017, I remember when the Me Too movement leapfrogged out of the black community into white corporate America. The Me Too movement started in the black community. So by 2017, 80 women had already come forward accusing Lisa Bloom's client, Harvey Weinstein, of rape, sexual assault, and harassment. Harvey Weinstein was her client. You go, girl. The sisterhood. The number of women accusing Harvey Weinstein of rape has now gone from 80 to 100. Harvey Weinstein, Lisa Bloom's client, can expect to sit in prison for the rest of his life. I'm always amazed how people continue to show their faces in public and how we allow them to show their faces in public. Lisa Bloom needs to go away. You're not, if you were, well, I'm going to tell you about Harvey Weinstein in a second. In the 2019 book, She Said, it was written by Jodi Kantor and Megan Twohey, and I think they were New York Times reporters. I think, and there was a movie made about this book, She Said. In their book, She Said, they write that Lisa Bloom reportedly convinced Harvey Weinstein to hire her because she said she was the best attorney out there due to her reputation as a champion for rape victims. According to the book, Lisa Bloom wrote a memo in 2016 explaining to Harvey Weinstein how she will work tirelessly to discredit Weinstein's accusers. There were 80 at the time. She spells out her plan to ruin their reputations in order to make other women less willing to step forward. This book claims Lisa Bloom specifically mentioned the actress Rose McGowan, who Bloom promised to expose as, quote, a pathological liar. So in her memo, Lisa Bloom's Gloria Allred's daughter, Lisa Bloom, who's representing some of the Epstein victims, in her memo selling herself to the rapist, Harvey Weinstein, Lisa Bloom, who still shows her face in public, said, I will go after Rose McGowan and prove her to be a pathological liar. Well, you might remember Harvey Weinstein raped Rose McGowan in 1997 while the two of them were attending the Sundance Film Festival. A few years later, Rose McGowan accepted a $100,000 settlement from Weinstein in exchange for remaining silent about the rape. She eventually spoke out, though, and became one of the leading voices in the Me Too movement. When white women started speaking out, she was one of the leading voices. According to some reporting, Lisa Bloom, that would be Gloria Allred's daughter, who champions victims, Lisa Bloom wrote a memo promising Harvey Weinstein that she had files on Rose McGowan's sexual history. This is according to the book and reporting on the book, that Lisa Bloom, Gloria Allred's daughter, wrote a memo promising the rapist, Harvey Weinstein, that she had files on Rose McGowan's sexual past and that she will help to neutralize these rape accusations against Harvey Weinstein, who raped Rose McGowan in 1997. It was at that time Harvey Weinstein hired private detectives to dig up dirt on McGowan. This was nearly 2 decades after raping her. Bloom claims she didn't know about the detectives, but she claims she had files to prove Rose McGowan had sex with other men, and therefore, what? Harvey Weinstein had every right to rape her. Lisa Bloom, who represented, Lisa Bloom, Gloria Allred's daughter, represented Harvey Weinstein throughout this entire time, up until the end of 2017. And while she was representing him, his company, Miramax, had optioned Lisa Bloom's book for a television series. What a woman. What a role model for my daughters. Lisa Bloom, Gloria Allred's daughter. Before the New York Times story broke about her and Harvey Weinstein, Lisa Bloom and Weinstein went to the New York Times to try to kill the story. What a woman. Try to kill the story. After the story broke, well, she couldn't deny it. She tried to kill the truth, because that's what lawyers are supposed to do. You kill the truth, or you poison a woman's reputation. But after the story broke, she did an interview with Vanity Fair, and she said, representing Harvey Weinstein, quote, was a colossal mistake. No, you got caught. That's all. You got caught. She added, quote, I thought that representing Weinstein would be a positive thing. Really? How? How does that help women? How does tarnishing Rose McGowan's reputation, how's that positive for anything other than your bank account? And then she adds, I thought it was a positive thing, and then she adds, but clearly it did not go over at all. It was a publicity problem. It didn't go over at all. It wasn't a moral issue. It was a publicity problem. By the time Bloom was representing Harvey Weinstein in 2016, 2017, Harvey Weinstein's abuse of women was a joke in Hollywood because that's all anyone could do or was willing to do, joke about it. He was way too powerful. When Rose McGowan came forward in 1999, that was like, that's like when Shakespeare in Love came out, when Miramax Harvey Weinstein could destroy any woman, and did. But there she is, Lisa Bloom, still showing her face in public, insisting even Harvey Weinstein deserved an attorney. That's what they always say. Yes, everybody deserves an attorney. But Rose McGowan's reputation didn't deserve to be destroyed because Harvey Weinstein deserved an attorney, and that attorney was you, Lisa Bloom. See, you're not supposed to poison the jury pool by hiring detectives. I'm not sure she denies that she hired the detectives, but she was poisoning the jury pool by promising to spill dirt on Harvey's accusers. So yes, Harvey Weinstein in America deserves a fair trial. He doesn't deserve to spend millions of dollars on destroying the brave women who accused him of rape, which he's guilty of. So people like Lisa Bloom, there have to be consequences. You can't, she should have been disbarred. Some people thought she should have. It's impossible to disbar an attorney in the United States. But Lisa Bloom should not be representing the Epstein victims. She should not be practicing law. And her mother should stop talking to her. It is hypocrites like Lisa Bloom who empower hypocrites like Mike Johnson, who calls America a Christian nation that must be ruled by biblical law. That's what he believes. And yet, Mike Johnson serves as a supplicant to Donald Trump, the complete antithesis of everything Jesus represents. I mean, it's insulting to your intelligence to go over why Donald Trump is the antithesis of everything Jesus represents. But on Monday, Donald Trump spoke at Washington, D.C.'s Museum of White Supremacy. I'm sorry, the Bible Museum. There's a Bible Museum. I confuse the Bible Museum with the Museum of White Supremacy. And Trump promised in his speech to protect school prayer. Unbelievable. So in Texas last month, a new law went into effect providing time in all Texas public schools for children to pray and or read the Bible. What's wrong with that? Everything. Especially since Texas also just passed a law in June ordering a 16 by 20 inch poster of the Ten Commandments to be displayed in every public school classroom. A federal judge this summer temporarily blocked enforcement of the Ten Commandments bill, saying it encroaches on our nation's separation of church and state. But Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, he's running for Cornyn's seat. He's going to primary Senator Cornyn. And Ken Paxton, whose wife just sued him for divorce on biblical grounds. In other words, he was cheating on her, and he was impeached. He survived an impeachment trial last year in the Texas Senate. He was trying to get a wealthy donor to give his mistress a job in Austin so he could be closer to her. The Senate in Texas didn't convict. He made some deal with the FBI on taking bribes. He had to do community service. Anyway, Ken Paxton, good Christian, he says he's ordering Texas schools to ignore the court's ruling to post the Ten Commandments. In a press release issued by Paxton, the Texas Attorney General, Paxton said on official Attorney General stationery that he wants children to begin each day reciting the Lord's Prayer in every Texas classroom. So what's wrong with that? Well, the Lord's Prayer is the foundational text for all Christians. It swears devotion to Jesus as our Father who art in heaven. Paxton added, America was founded on biblical truth. Well, it was actually founded by men who knew the biblical truth that charlatans like Ken Paxton and Greg Abbott abuse the Bible, and that's why the First Amendment, the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment, specifically forbids the government from privileging a state religion over all others. Our founding fathers were deists. First Amendment says freedom of speech. The government can't restrict freedom of speech or protests. And then there's the Establishment Clause to the First Amendment, which states there will be no official religion, no established religion here in the United States. That's where separation of church and state comes from. Yes, it's not meant, separation of church and state isn't mentioned in the Constitution. It doesn't have to be, because the First Amendment says religion has no place in government. And here's why. In 2017, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton said he was concerned that a Muslim student was reading the Quran in a public school classroom, specifically cordoned off for prayer. Paxton has made it abundantly clear that this is a Christian nation. Openly says so. Well, you cannot separate white Christian nationalism from the Republican war on science. There goes hand in hand. White Christian nationalists are anti-government, and vaccines to white Christian nationalists are nothing more than the government ordering people, telling people what they can or can't do with their bodies, which white Christian nationalists are adamantly opposed to, unless you're a woman who wants an abortion. Then the government can tell you you can't get an abortion. So they're opposed to vaccines. They're opposed to scientific research because they believe in God's will. Many of these white Christian nationalists see a health epidemic like COVID or the measles or smallpox as God's providence. There's a term, I think it's providentia. Leave it. The Dominionists, and Mike Johnson is one, believe in providentialism. It's like it's God's will. And vaccines or masks defy the will of our Lord and Savior. Science, these imbeciles believe, science takes us further away from Jesus. And we saw during the height of the COVID crisis that it was the white evangelical churches who were the most opposed to lockdowns, masks, and then vaccines. A lot of white evangelical Christian pastors were the first ones to die from COVID. Florida's plan, where am I? Florida's plan to end vaccine mandates won't begin until December. You know about this? Last week, Governor Ron DeSantis and his Surgeon General announced that Florida would become the first state to eliminate vaccine mandates. Now, this story has not been reported properly, so it's confusing. I know that there's time constraints, but nobody understands what Florida just did. They're not reporting it properly. I will, okay? Last week, Governor Ron DeSantis and his Surgeon General announced that Florida would become the first state to eliminate vaccine mandates for chickenpox, hepatitis B, influenza, and pneumococcal diseases. So in order to attend public school in Florida, you no longer need a vaccine for chickenpox, hepatitis B, influenza, and pneumococcal disease. But that ban remains in effect until December, just in time for flu season And I don't know what pneumococcal disease is. I think pneumo, is that like lungs? You have two lungs. Cockle, your testicles are like lungs. Is it something with your, is it a diseased pair of testicles? Pneumococcal? My Latin is faulty. Okay, so that goes into effect in 90 days. But in order to eliminate a vaccine mandate for polio and measles, the Florida state legislature will have to pass a law. And the Florida state legislature doesn't meet until January of next year, when Ron DeSantis is expected to introduce that bill. And of course, rewriting the maps to get rid of any Democratic congresspeople like Moskowitz or Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So, Florida Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo was appointed by Ron DeSantis 4 years ago. He was on CNN Sunday to defend Florida's anti-vax agenda. Dr. Ladapo admitted to Jake Tapper that he had absolutely no data that projects the outcome of what will happen when vaccines become voluntary instead of mandatory. Jake Tapper was a little taken aback. And Dr. Ladapo, Surgeon General of Florida, said, we don't need data. My decision on the vaccines doesn't need any studies. This is an issue of right versus wrong. Doesn't matter what the data shows. This is an issue of right versus wrong. Goes back to what I was saying about white Christian nationalists and the link between their belief in America being a Christian nation and their war on science. It's an issue of right versus wrong. Vaccines are wrong. No, I don't need science. Right versus wrong. That's Dr. Joseph Ladapo proving the only thing more dangerous than a Christian white nationalist is a black Christian white nationalist. Dr. Jerome Adams, who served as Surgeon General during Trump's first administration, now warning that Ron DeSantis will go down in history as the governor who killed vaccines. Dr. Jerome Adams saying that's all Ron DeSantis will be remembered for. Last week, Dr. Adams called on Trump to fire Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is currently serving as our Director of Health and Human Services. Earlier this year, Kennedy promised he would release information that would shed light on why there seems to be so many children born with autism. The Wall Street Journal reporting that Kennedy is about to issue a report that blames Tylenol for autism. Tylenol's a vaccine? I don't understand. I thought vaccines cause autism. Now Kennedy's saying it's Tylenol. Kennedy reportedly, at least according to the Wall Street Journal, is about to release a study showing acetaminophen, showing there's a direct link between pregnant mothers taking Tylenol or acetaminophen and babies born with autism. Countless studies indicate otherwise, which is why Bobby Kennedy is probably going to release this study. According to CBS News, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists say, quote, there's no clear evidence that proves a direct relationship between the prudent use of acetaminophen during pregnancy and fetal developmental issues. Over the weekend, Carrie Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s sister, called her brother, quote, incompetent and misguided. Yeah, that's the problem. Sisters tend to take it easy on their brothers. Caroline Kennedy, the daughter of President Kennedy, calls Bobby Kennedy Jr. a predator. It doesn't go into specifics, but I think we can read between the lines. Why do you think Caroline Kennedy calls Cousin Bobby a predator. Former Congressman Joseph Kennedy Jr. called his uncle, quote, a threat to the health and well-being of every American. It's the first week of September, and you know what that means? We're looking at another government shutdown. The government's fiscal, it's like I just went over this, time really flies. The government's fiscal year ends on October 1st. That means Congress has to pass the 12 appropriations bills that comprise the 2026 budget so Trump can sign it into law. That's supposed to happen before October 1st. It never does. That means the government either shuts down or Congress passes a continuing resolution that keeps the government open while they work to pass the 12 budget bills. I know you're thinking, we just passed one big, beautiful bill. It was signed into law on July 4th. Doesn't that mean we have a budget for 2026? I actually thought it did. I thought, oh, we have a budget for 2026. Turns out I was wrong. So I issue mistakes. I issue corrections for I also issue mistakes. I made a mistake. I said that one big, beautiful bill was the 2026 budget, and I could not have been more wrong. They are separate. One big, beautiful bill influences the 2026 appropriations bills, but it's not the same thing as a budget bill. Separate things. Now, the one big, beautiful bill, you might remember, signed into law on July 4th. It raised the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. That means we won't be fighting over raising the debt ceiling as we negotiate the 2026 budget. That one big, beautiful bill also allocated $100 billion over the next 3 years for ICE, making ICE the largest law enforcement agency in America, bigger than the FBI, the DEA, the Coast Guard. ICE is going to hire 10,000 more agents. It's bigger than the ATF. By some estimates, the budget for ICE is now more than all the other agencies combined. To do what? To do what? ICE needs to be eliminated. And, you know, yes, Harvey Weinstein deserves an attorney, but nobody forced Lisa Bloom to be that attorney. Nobody's forcing you to be a POS who works for ICE. If you work for ICE, you're a POS. You are. You are. That bill, one big, beautiful bill, also extended the 2017 Trump tax cuts. And in order to pay for it, they're not paying for the tax cuts, so they're just racking up $5 trillion worth of debt. They're cutting Medicaid and food stamps. Something like 15 million people, thanks to one big, beautiful bill, are going to lose their health insurance or Medicaid. Okay, that was one big, beautiful bill, but there are 12 appropriations bills that make up the 2026 budget, and they're not going to get passed by October 1st when the fiscal year starts, okay? So it's going to be interesting. In the next 3 months, usually this is how it goes, we won't have a budget. If we're lucky, it will be a series of continuing resolutions. However, the head of the Office of Budget and Management, Russell Vought, supposedly wants the government to shut down because he has a plan. He has a plan to, if the government shuts down, then he can go in and do what is called rescissions, which are against the law, but that hasn't stopped him before. So in the next 3 months, probably, we won't have a budget. Series of continuing resolutions. They call them the CR. So you don't they call a CR to keep people out of the process. That's how they use language, to be exclusionary. It's a CR. So I don't know what the hell a CR is. And what is going to make this especially difficult for Mike Johnson is he will be working with a 2-vote majority in the House of Representatives for the next 3 months. It possibly could get down to a 1-vote majority in the House of Representatives, depending on what happens. And, maybe I think for like a month he might only have a 1-vote majority. Politico wrote about this yesterday. So there are, I believe, 435 members of the House of Representatives. I think that's correct. 420 is when you smoke dope. 435 is the number of House. I'm trying to remember my mnemonics, or my pneumococcal disease. Okay, 400, I'm sorry. 435 House members. But Democrats this year lost Raul Grijalva from Arizona. He died. Sylvester Turner of Texas also died, Democrat, and Jerry Connolly of Virginia also died. And House Republican Mark Green of Tennessee unexpectedly quit the House. He was having an affair. He was having a nasty marriage. Republican cheating on his wife. Okay. There's supposed to be 435 House members. Right now, there are only 431 because 3 died and 1 cheated on his wife, the Republican. 3 Democrats died and 1 Republican cheated on his wife. And that leaves Mike Johnson right now, I believe, with a 3-vote majority. And that changes Tuesday, today, when Virginia will elect a Democrat to replace Congressman Jerry Connolly, who died earlier this year. I believe that narrows Mike Johnson's majority to 2. It's a 2-vote majority. So it is conceivable that as special elections are held over the next 3 months to replace the 3 other members of Congress, at one point, Trump will have a 1-vote majority in the House of Representatives, which means everybody has to show up to work. And you know how much Republicans hate work. And then the year will finish up, according to Politico, I believe, with a 2-vote majority in the House of Representatives. That's what they're expecting. And then we'll go into the midterms with Mike Johnson only having a 2-vote majority. It shouldn't be that hard for Democrats to flip the House of Representatives. This is why Texas just redrew their map to add 5 reliably red congressional seats. This is why California is going to try to redraw their map to create 5 reliably blue House seats. This is the Mop-Up. I'm David Ferdman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. David Ferdman? It's David Feldman. I like that. I think the graphics are getting a little better on this show. And we have a sponsor. Guests on the David Feldman Show stay at the lovely Trump Doral in Miami, Florida. And this is, let me go large here. This is our new sponsor, the Trump Doral, International Doral in Miami, Florida. This is Marjorie Taylor Greene getting a good night's rest because at the Trump National Doral, the bed bugs are flown in fresh every evening right before they turn down your bed. And it's like thousands of little tiny fingers massaging you off to sleepy, sleepy slumberland. Here is surveillance video of Marjorie Taylor Greene being massaged to sleep by the bedbugs. Yeah, and they go into her mouth because they're attracted to dung. And here's the restroom at the Trump National Doral in Miami. And can you see the sign? It says, warning, customers must wash hands before returning to their meal. It's interesting. Nothing about the employees. I know he's a germaphobe. But what about the employees? Don't they have to wash their hands? I'm David Feldman reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. You know, I haven't been promoting the crap over shopdavidfeldman.com. Since Trump took office, I just felt it was inappropriate to try to sell you stuff like Uncle Scam, right? Or what's this? The David Ferdman Show. You can get a David Ferdman Show mug over at Shop David Feldman. I think I'm going to make a sign that says customers must wash hands before returning to their meal. Because every time I go out to dinner, I see the employees must wash hands. I'm thinking, you know what? I'd rather have the people who walk up to me and go, hey, David, how you doing? And I have to shake their filthy hands. I want the customers. Okay. Thank you to Bob and Mila for keeping the conversation civil in the chat room. If leave a comment, I issue corrections if I get something wrong. What else? Help me out here. Share this if you enjoyed any part of this. Help me out and share this. Get the word out. I don't have anybody promoting this show. I'm not part of. It's Sam Cedar and Robert Smigel. Those are the only people who support my show. So, and not my listeners. I mean, it's pretty remarkable that this has just been a completely grassroots endeavor. So thank you. I literally can't do it without, I'm not, part of some network. I'm not getting $8,000 a month from the Democratic Party to spew talk. That I'm going to stay out of that because I like some of the people and I don't want to crap on the Democratic Party because we're up against Hitler right now, and I'll take von Papen over Hitler, even though von Papen went before the Nuremberg judges. All right, that's it. Thank you to Mila and Bob and all the other things. Subscribe to my newsletter and my channel and hit the like button. That way, people are having trouble finding the show. They sign up for notifications and they say, I don't know when your show is on. I don't even know when my show is on. Is it on right now? I have no idea. Am I doing a show? Goodbye.